All right, everybody. This is John Stoutinger with JCX Fishing. Um, Tonight we're going to have a special guest on with 603 Bassin, and we're going to be talking about camera setup for your boat, how to get the best out of your pictures while you're out on the water. And yes, don't be afraid to ask questions because that's what we are here for. Um, so in a minute, after our sponsors, we're going to be bringing up Sean with 603 Bassin. As you can see, his website on a scroll. So first off, I'd like to, like I said, lead off with our sponsors here, and here we go. Let me get this thing going. Okay, K9 Fishing, Wicked Weights Quality Tungsten, Hayabusa Fishing Hooks, Trigger Happy Comfort Grips, Martin's Custom Baits, Buck and Bass Rain Gear, It's Pro Fishing, Fillmore Tackle and More, Heat Your Meat, Kisselcraft's Custom Rod Building, Ardent, Seneca Meadows, MGM Cull Tags, and of course me, JCX Fishing. So we're going to be bringing on, I just want to talk to you before I bring him on. We're going to be switching up our format a little bit here next month. We're going to do 20 minutes of interview. We're going to do a spotlight on a technique for a little bit, and then we're going to do the question and answer session after that. So about 25 minutes before we hit a question and answer session. But for tonight, just go ahead and shoot them. I turned the questions on for Sean so that he can see them in case I missed something, which has happened in the past. So let's all welcome Sean to the stream. Sean with 603 Bassing, or www.603bass. That is 603, not 603, 603.
We just like
Hello,
to say
Sean.
603. How's it going,
What's that?
John? Yeah, so we just like to say 603 here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, I don't want to type a O and have it be a zero and them get frustrated with me.
Oh,
So
trust me, I hear you there.
yeah, all right. So Sean, if you don't mind, can you give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Sean. I've not quite lived in New Hampshire my whole life, but close enough at this point. 37. I was born in Massachusetts, but raised here in New Hampshire from 8 years old and onward. Still been in the same town here since we moved up here. As far as my fishing background goes, I've literally been in a bass boat or a boat of some kind since before I could walk and talk. My dad, and I call him my uncle, he's my dad's best friend, had been fishing since before I was born, and me being bored did not slow them down. We used to have, those things you put your kids in. They got a little bouncy seat, and then, like the whole thing's on wheels. I can scoot around the house. Yep. They put me in that in the middle of the John boat and throw a bug net over me so I could still go fishing. And I followed my dad everywhere when I was a kid, and I loved it. I used to do, we just go out with my dad as often as we could in the John boat, and then we go out with my uncle in his bass boat. Did a couple of tournaments with them when I was much younger. Like 10 years old, I think was the first one I did. And I just loved it right up until I was in college. I had fished my whole life with just Texas rig worms, and one day my dad and I got our butts kicked out there, middle of the summer, and I saw these guys smoke them out in the middle. I'm like, why don't we fish out there? And I don't know, I don't do that. I only beat the bank. And I was like, okay, but that was it. Like, that was the moment it clicked. And I was like, I need to learn more. I'm not content with just doing it this way. So from there, I started reading everything I get my hands on. Bassresource.com was one of the best resources I ever had when I first started like expanding beyond the one thing that I knew. And I just my love for bass fishing grew with every new thing that I learned from that point moving forward. And it kind of ballooned into this thing now. I tried the tournament trail for a little bit, realized that what I knew in kettle ponds didn't translate to the big, deep glacial lakes and the lakes range of New Hampshire. My friend and I had a gaming channel for years, and it was a ton of fun. And at one point I stopped doing that, and I wasn't myself anymore because I didn't have a creative outlet. So my wife bought me a GoPro, and she was like, hey, just give it a shot. Like, you kind of like, you can talk well, you can speak well, other than right this now at this moment, and just like just do something, have fun with it. And it allowed me, like, I already knew how to video edit, so I was like, all right, yeah, what the heck, why not? And I just started doing simple cast to catch, and I started looking at it more, and I was like, oh wow, there's actually really nobody in like New England that does a ton of this. Almost everything is outside of New England in the Northeast. When I first started this, so I was like, oh, what the hell? I'll try and do something a little bit more informative. And here we are, I think at this point, 5 years later, and the channel has grown to what it is now, and it's just kind of supplemented everything that I've done with bass fishing. Every single year I bust my butt out in the water. I'm one of the earliest ones out and one of the last ones off the water every season here in New Hampshire, because I want to continue to learn. And with that journey, I've started really sharing a lot of that information along the way, because trying to find a lot of good, helpful information for people, not only in New Hampshire, but New England, is tough. Most of the guys that have that knowledge are tournament anglers. They don't like sharing that information, which understandable to a degree. And it's ever evolving, everything I've done. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm just a bass fishing fanatic, and I found a way to have a creative outlet that extends my love for bass fishing, and it's kind of turned into this semi-successful channel. Here we are at this point now.
Awesome. And I want to give a shout out to Daniel Kenny. He's the one who actually got me in touch with Sean, because I asked Daniel to do it, and he's like, well, I have somebody, but pretty much I have somebody who's more experienced, younger, and that can talk about the new stuff rather than the 80s when I was doing it. So thank you, Daniel, for setting me up with Sean. I did see a couple of your videos on Champlain. I'm kind of a little bit jealous of some of the fish you were catching. I go up to Champlain, and I'm not, for some reason, the big bite eludes me up there. I don't know what it is, but just want to
Hey,
give you a shout out.
Well, thank you. Full disclosure, I had a lot of help with that, in the sense of like, okay, here's some dead water. And that's the beauty about Champlain, is you probably are very well aware of, like, there's very little dead water up there. It's kind of hard to find dead water. There's so many good spots.
Yeah.
But, they kind of just, they're like, okay, what are you looking for? I was like, I like to figure this out for myself. So just kind of like pinpoint me in the right areas, and I'll work it from there. Because that's what Andrew and I like doing. And it worked out. They're like, okay, well, here's like 30 spots, and any one of them could be good right now. These are your like smallmouth primary spots, your largemouth primary spots, and have at it. My buddy DJ was the one that he's 3D_fishing on Instagram. He was the one that brought me up the first time, and last year was the first time I ever went, and that was a little different. He's like, okay, we're specifically going to a very particular area, and we're just doing one very specific technique, and you're gonna have a blast. And that's what got me hooked, and I've been loving it ever since, man. These guys give me some pretty good spots that I can work with, so I don't have to work too hard to cover. I think it's like 260,000 acres of water or something like that.
Yeah, it's not that small.
No, not at all.
So afterwards, you can shoot me a message with those coordinates, and I promise I won't be there that often.
I'll just let you know the weekends you're not supposed to be there.
Right, and of course that'll probably be the weekends I'll be up there.
Yeah.
But anyone from ice out to ice, ice melt, right?
Yeah.
All right, but no. So when I spoke to you about coming on, I want to talk about your camera setup on your boats. Can you give us a little bit of synopsis on how you do that and some of the angles and stuff like that you like to use?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this was trial and error. When I first started really kind of making videos, I was doing a lot of solo fishing for a whole number of reasons. And what I had originally started with was I had like a little stubby seat post that you sit in the back, whoever the back boater was, stick it in the seat post hole. And I made up like this kind of crazy PVC mount. So it came up and then it did like this square. Sorry, I punched my mic. And then GoPro makes like a handlebar bike mount for the GoPros. And they had one I found on Amazon that was the perfect size for the PVC I did. And I rigged this whole thing up so it'd stand up in the back of the boat, and it was almost head height. I had one GoPro in the back of the boat that would just face forward. It would capture everything. And that's how I got started. But as I started like looking at other people, what people were doing that were more successful, I was like, dude, I need more angles. So that was kind of a short-lived perspective, but a really cool one. And actually, the person I got the idea of that from was Lake Fork guy.
Okay.
Yeah, Justin. I forget his real name. one of the Guggen guys. Because when he first started, before he went Guggen, I loved the dude's channel, and I always loved that about his boat setup. He had that one amazing angle that was like the primary angle, and you could see everything that was going on. And I was like, yeah, I want to replicate that, and I just went from there. Then from that point forward, as I started adding more GoPros so I could have multiple angles, I started playing around with it a little bit and really paid attention to the footage after the end of the day. Like, okay, based on what I was doing for the day, because I set them up and I forget them. And a lot of people don't think I do that. A lot of people think I stress the cameras all day. No. I set them up in 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, and I leave them running uninterrupted until I am done and at the boat ramp, and then I go back to the cameras and shut them off. Only time I mess with them during the day is if, for one reason or another, one of them randomly shuts off, which I've gotten past that point now. That hasn't been an issue in a while. Or in the heat of the moment, someone's getting the net, we're running around the boat or whatever. Someone, knocks one of my mounts over, and camera's now off kilter, so I'll just go over, straighten it out, and call it good. So now at this point, kind of with like years of like trying to troubleshoot and adding, now at one point I had 6 GoPros on the boat. Now I primarily just rock 5. What I've found to be some of the best angles is I mount off of my windshields. Currently, I'm changing again for the spring, and I'll get into that. But a really easy and effective way to do it, they make these like flexible gooseneck mounts. 1 second, I have one right here. I don't want to show it. I stood on my own headphone cord. So it's these like flexible goose mount, and they're great. So it doesn't have the clamp, but it's just got this spring-loaded, like pretty honking, like heavy-duty clamp that you can just mount to your windshields. And it's got these little rubber boots. It will still kind of scuff up your boat windshield. So if you're someone that doesn't like anything like that on your boat, beware. But it works really well because what I can do is I can clamp it to the windshield and then bend it up and over, and voila, I've got, like, no matter where I put it on the windshield, I can mount this thing up, and I can, okay, no, I want a little bit of a wider angle, or no, I want a little taller, the whole 9 yards. I get these on Amazon. I can't remember the brand, and this one, there's a reason why this is in my house. I've beaten the crap out of this thing. It's dead. We can't use this one anymore. It's got electrical tape on like 4 or 5 of these segments because they've cracked, and when they crack, they get way too loosey-goosey. But they're great. They're cheap. They're readily available. You can find them, like, Amazon is primarily where I buy them when I was buying them. You can get them like Walmart. Like, it doesn't matter. Pretty much only online, though. I haven't found a store that carries these in. But, again, as long as you can mount it to your windshield, or you can mount it to, like, some bass boats still have the grab bars on the side. Depending upon what mount you're running for your graphs, you could, like, clamp it to the backside of your graph mount and stand it up. There's a number of different ways that you can make this work, and then from there articulate it around to get the angle that you prefer. And what I liked about this particular model, they make dozens of them, but this one is 18 inches. It's the longest one I've found so far. So even after clamping it and articulating it around, I can still get kind of like a higher point of view that, unless I'm standing right in front of it, if I'm at the front of the boat, or if I'm in the middle of it, if I'm like, standing up, set the hook, fishing, whole 9 yards, or if I'm kneeling down, unhooking the fish, showing it off to the camera, I'm always in frame. So with that, that's kind of what I always try and do with setting up my GoPros. I mount one, I have a dual console boat, so it makes it a lot easier. Mount one to each windshield, and I offset them pretty far to the side, so that no matter where we are in the front of the boat, one of those cameras has a good shot from both consoles facing forward. And then from there, I also have another one on that same articulating mount mounted to the trolling motor. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. Most trolling motors have that little support kickstand thing when it's in the stowed position. And you've got a lot of flexibility with the clamps that come with this flexible mount. So I just grab it. It stands straight up. I get the full 18 inches. I've only hit, in all these years, I've only hit that front camera one time in a cast. So it stands up, but it's not like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if I'm just used to it, or if it really is just at the perfect height that it's not a worry or a concern for me. It doesn't impede my ability to fish. So with those 3 cameras, doesn't matter what you're doing on the boat. You've got one dead center from the front facing back, and you've got one left and right offset. So even if you're standing all the way over against the gunnel, you've got a camera that you're almost perfectly centered in on the frame the whole time. And then from there, with fishing with a buddy and stuff, I just grabbed a fourth gooseneck, and for a little bit I had a fifth one too, and actually I think we had a sixth one at one point. No, that's when we did chest mounts. But I do the same thing. I just throw two more on, but into a little more of the center, and I mount the GoPros on there, both facing back, left and right. For those, I'll throw on a wider angle view, and I'll cover like the actual camera portion of this next.
Okay.
For the back, because trying to set them off to the outside, like it gets too crowded. You can't really get two GoPros way offset. And my buddy almost always fishes more biased towards the middle, like I do in the front. So having them just a little off center, left and right side, it really doesn't matter where he is. Even if he's staying way off to the side, like it still looks good, but it primarily, like he's almost always in the middle. So left or right, like he's always in a good camera angle.
Okay.
So it works out.
All right. And we do have a question from Cam Yates. With a GoPro, what size SD card do you need for the GoPro to run for a full day, say 8 to 10 hours?
That is an excellent question. And I honestly think I'm one of the more well-versed people on that because of all of the trial and error I went through for years on this. It entirely depends on what resolution you're filming at and what frames per second you're filming at. Like those two things are the single biggest factors in what you're doing. Resolution is going to impact how much footage you get on there more than frame rate. But they're like almost equal as far as to how much room they're going to take up. And lighting actually matters, with one caveat on that. That's particular to the GoPros I was using up until what I'll be doing next season. I just bought all new Hero 10s. So this season moving forward, like it should be even better footage. Because The thing I noticed, each generation of GoPro, even though it's still like 1080p at 60 frames per second, the processors get better and faster. So the overall clarity on it gets better. It's like the difference between 1080p on a GoPro versus 1080p on a digital camera. It's the same resolution, right? But a digital camera is like, it looks 10 times better despite being the same resolution. With lighting, that also plays into it. If you're constantly filming at, say, like dusk, where you've got like moderate lighting, you're making that camera work a lot harder. So you're actually going to get less footage in the same amount of time than you would if you were filming in the middle of the day. So those are some really important caveats to understand. With that said, the last 2 years I've been filming 2.7K resolution at 60 frames per second. And I can get about, we'll say, 8.5 to 9 hours of continuous footage before the cameras fill up, which is a lot. And that would be on a 256 gigabyte card.
Okay.
Pardon me.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Ask your question.
So that means on a cloudy day, you're not going to get as much on a cloudy day as you will on a sunny day because of the light.
Correct. But when you're talking like the middle of the day, that difference in overall time you can get is way less impactful than, say, if, like when I first started this, I was almost always fishing in the afternoon. I'd go out after work on Fridays and then Saturday afternoons after I'd, get stuff done around the house. Sundays, it didn't matter. But if you're like primarily fishing in the afternoon into the evening and you've got like that, like 1.5 hour window of dying light before you get to full dark, that's where you're really going to see that dramatic decrease in how much time and footage you can get into a single video card.
Okay. Another question from Mark. He says, can you run power cords off the boat to run a GoPro for the duration of the day?
Yes, that's another thing that I played around with, but honestly, I find that to be more problematic than anything else. A big part of that is for the GoPros, if you're going to run it off external power, the best thing to actually do is pull the battery out. If you try and run the battery in, and I don't know if it's still the same issue with the newer GoPros, this has always been an issue with my Hero 3s, my 4s, and my 5s. It would run off the GoPro battery first, and it would get down to a certain point, and then as soon as the battery's about to die, then it would just seamlessly switch over to that external power source. But if you don't have the right amperage and voltage, it's not going to run. So it's not just as simple as, like, I think a standard like USB charger from your car is like 2.1 volts or amps. I forget what it is. I think it's volts. That won't do it. That's not enough power. You have to have the next one up, which I think is 3.5 volts. So if you can get like a USB power source like that from your boat to work with it, it should be fine. And that simplifies your setup. However, now you're running additional GoPros off your boat. If it's just one GoPro, it probably isn't going to make a difference. But, for me, especially when I'm tournament fishing, I'm using my batteries hard. I've got 3 graphs. I've got my Mega 360. My Yamaha show is pretty power hungry, I found. So it takes a lot to turn it over. Running live wells, running, bilge pumps. I'm fishing a really big lake and we're just, constantly dealing with water in the boat. I don't want to run more power off my boat if I can avoid it. I find it much more easier and convenient to run just off of separate battery packs. And then from there, you have flexibility to put, you know what? I don't want the GoPro here today. I want to move it to a different spot in the boat. Not a problem. Just move the GoPro with the battery pack. So long story short, you can, as long as it's got the right voltage output for a GoPro, which I believe, again, is the 3.5. But for me, I don't recommend it. You got to drill holes in your boat. Unless you already have a ton of USB ports around your boat, you'd have to add them in. You'd have to wire them to your battery. And I did that. It's not fun. It's just so much easier and cheaper just to get a dedicated battery pack to it. And I can even answer that. I'll just go ahead and expand on that. With the older GoPros, my Hero 4s and 5s, I would say you could probably get away with like 8,000 milliamp hours of power to run a GoPro the way I do. 2.7K res, 60 frames per second for almost 9 hours of continual shooting. And I always want my battery to run longer than what my recording capacity is. So at minimum, I run a 10,000 milliamp hour power pack for all my GoPros. And that's perfect. I can get about like 10 to 11 hours of continuous use. And I'm using, like good brand name Anchor stuff. I'm using knockoff stuff I found from Amazon. And all those things work. It gives me all the power I need. At the end of the day, I'm down to the one light. Sometimes that one light's blinking like, okay, I'm running really low. But battery pack still lasts the cameras, before I can record for footage. So it works. One thing I'm finding, I got all these new Hero 10s. I had to do a ton of testing with these to figure out, like, okay, what can I realistically do? Because they changed the style on these. So the whole camera is now waterproof. All my old ones, actually, I think the Hero 5 is waterproof to a degree. It's like water resistant. But like the Hero 4s, you had to have that clear plastic case to maintain it to be waterproof. Those were way less power hungry than the 10s. What I originally was going to do with the new setup, which I'll get to that at some point, when the conversation gets there, I was like, okay, one 10,000 milliamp hour battery pack gets me one GoPro the whole day. I found an Anchor brand battery pack that has 2 of the higher voltage outputs at 26,800 milliamp hour. It's a big battery. I was like, no, this would be great because I can run 2 GoPros off this one new post setup I'm going to do, run them off one battery pack. It simplifies the boat and we'll be good to go. Those new Hero 10s are power hungry, like really power hungry. I can't even get away with the 10,000 milliamp pack. I need to now go up to a 16,000 milliamp hour battery pack to run one GoPro for 10 hours. They are insanely power hungry. And I don't know if it's just because I'm now trying to do 2.7K at 120 frames, or I can do 4K at 60 frames per second. If just that extra step up to either the higher resolution or the higher frame rate is what's drawing it, or if it's a combination of that and just the new processors they have in the Hero 10s. Regardless, if you're looking at the newer ones, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same for the Hero 9, they're very power hungry. So if you're looking to do the same thing as me, you got to get a big boy battery pack to run these things all day.
Okay, well, you're a little bit or a lot above what I'm trying to do here. So, anyways,
dude, I love this stuff. I'm a tech junkie. Like I'm just as happy being out in the wilderness with no electronics whatsoever and just being lost in the woods as I am diving deep into all this stuff because it intrigues me. But I think a lot of part of that comes from my engineering background. I'm a business development manager, but my whole career has been mechanical engineer. So like, just being always tech forward and especially in my area where I specialize in new product development, like it kind of goes hand in hand with everything else.
All right. So have you thought about designing any of your own mounts or anything like that?
I have.
Put them on market?
Yep. And a lot of that was actually driven by these Hero 10s. What I wanted to do with this whole new upgrade was I really want to go to 4K at 120 frames per second. I don't think it could be done. These new Hero 10s run hot. I actually got one of those like laser thermometers, not the ones for humans, but ones used for like actual like manufacturing applications or for like cooking applications, things like
Okay.
that, to measure these. Because the first time I ran a test at 4K at 120 frames, they were shutting off at 30 minutes. Never even crossed my mind to think there'd be an overheating issue. So go to the internet, start searching around. Yep, sure enough, ever since they went to this new case design where the whole thing is waterproof, they crazy overheating issues. But GoPro doesn't care because their market research shows that 75% of all GoPro users use these for less than 30 minutes total recording time. I'm one of the few like power users that like
Right.
lets them run all day. So I got like a really nice aluminum case I found on Amazon, and it still wasn't enough. Like aluminum's a great heat sink. It should pull a lot of that heat out. And it dropped it a couple degrees, but it was still like toeing the edge. So then the other thing I found, Raspberry Pi makes these neat little like programmable kind of like mini computer things. And they also sell their own little tiny heat sinks. They're like 1 inch by ½ inch or something like that. I bought a pack of those. I have 7 heat sinks on my GoPro with that aluminum cage trying to pull heat out of this. I got it to work. That is now, it is staying like 10 degrees below that shutdown threshold from
Okay.
overheating with the case and all the aluminum heat sinks, the whole 9 yards. But that plays into your question. I'm like, dude, I can do this better. There's got to be a way I can design an aluminum cage that has all these heat sinks already built into it so that it'll be good. And I even started looking into like waterproof PC fans, like 1.5 inch square PC fans, and then like additional power sources. I can run them off because they only need 5 volts. I'm like, yeah, I can make this work, but I got it to work for now with just the basics, but the
Okay.
wheels are already turning. I'm already thinking about like, I'm pretty sure I can make a really, really good aluminum case that would work for these Hero 9s and 10s. That would be
Okay.
way, way, way better efficient with heat. And that's the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is all these other, mounts they make out there phenomenal, but, none of them are doing anything about the heat issue with these models. So I have an idea I'm going to try and roll with. I'm well versed in the whole manufacturing world. I can find people. I've got one of my best friends owns a machine shop. I get prototypes made, so it's happening. We're gonna do something.
All right. Good. Yeah, because it's with your background and what you're doing on the boat, seems like a good fit.
Yeah, like it all kind of works out in the end. Like things that nobody would ever really have to think about. I just it's in my nature with everything I've
Yeah.
done, being new product development my whole life. Like the whole reason I got into this career path was because I used to be really big into freestyle BMX. And I wanted to own my own bike company at one point. But the whole plan was, okay, I'll do like a handful of years in manufacturing environments, get used to the flow of things, learn as much as I can, and then I'll go off my own. And that the whole BMX industry collapsed in 2008 with the rest of the world. And when money came back up, the BMX scene never came back. Everybody got into mountain biking, and I have no interest in that. I like watching it, but I don't have any interest in getting into that. So I just still been at my career, but now I'm seeing other opportunities as we go here.
Yeah. Now, when you were in the BMX world, did you race or tricks or
Tricks?
jump?
No, all tricks. I can't tell you how many days and weeks and months I spent in the woods building dirt jumps with my friends, going like all over the place to ride at different skate parks. So we met and got to ride with a ton of pros over the years. I was never really that good. I was okay. One of my best friends could have gone pro. I don't say that like he's my buddy. He could have gone pro. No, there was a bunch of kids from Derry, New Hampshire that did go pro, and he was better than them like a year or two before they went pro. But there's a whole background to that. But like that's what we did, man. Like we were out in the woods building stuff. Go to skate parks all over friggin' the Northeast. We go ride street like Boston. We go down to Rhode Island and Connecticut and stuff like that. Ride around like Yukon campus. Had some good spots. So there was a lot of fun back then.
Yeah. Growing up, my buddies had BMXs. I didn't, and I thought it'd be cool to try some stuff out. Yep. So he's like, okay, go ahead. Well, I tried one jump. Tried to bunny hop a curb, and then I forgot to check my surroundings, and there was a telephone pole there, and I ran into that, and yeah, it didn't move.
No. That's rough.
So yeah, I messed the dude's bike up, and that was the last time he let me use it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I think back in the 80s, it was like a $500 bike,
Yep.
Back in the early to mid late 80s. But
if you still had that now, it'd be worth like 10 grand. It's crazy.
No, not when I was done with it.
That's true.
Yeah, it's something, but yeah. So Now, we do have a lot of co-anglers that watch this podcast.
Yeah.
Um, More so on the replay. Any suggestions for them? The head mounts, the chest mounts, stuff
Yep.
like that.
So I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things that I don't do that a lot of other people do is chest mounts. I tried it. I hate just the feeling of being restricted. I'd
Correct.
go to set my hook and I was constantly smashing into the camera. I tried it for like 3 trips. I'm like, you know what? It's just not for me. I'd rather just add more GoPros to the boat. And
Right.
honestly, like, I hate watching footage of chest mounts because, in my opinion, they're really only good for like short snippets, where you can really see the
Right.
fish. Otherwise, all you see is this.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
hands in front of it. But I know that's the only way a lot of people can do it. So, and actually, one of my buddies that I met through, we were friends in high school. I still know him now, Fishing Grubs. He's got a really big YouTube channel as well. He really is diehard in the chest cam mount because it works for what he does. He excels with it. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. He also does the same thing as me, where he runs a battery pack to it. Just a short,
Okay.
like 18-inch USB cord. I think probably can even get like an 12-inch one, and he'll run it to that. And he'll just stuff the battery pack in his pocket. I've seen him do that, but he also just runs like batteries. With that, I'm really big on audio quality, and he tried to get into that first, and he finally found a good mic that worked for it. And with that, you can run looping mode on GoPros, which is really, really convenient for people like that, where if you don't want to film all day and have to edit 9 hours of continuous footage across 5 GoPros like I do, then
Right.
doing that with a chest mount, its own battery, either just you running the battery and having a couple of extra charge ones on hand, or running a battery pack to it, you can put it on looping mode. So the moment you're like, okay, you know what, I want to talk about what I'm doing, you basically just hit the record button, and it's technically always recording. And I forget what the overall length is. I think it's like 17-minute intervals, where it's like kind of like phantom recording in the background. And once
Okay.
it hits that cutoff point, it stops, deletes that, and continues. So at any point, you can hit record, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm only 12 minutes into this loop. I have that 12 minutes, and boom, now we're starting the next loop of footage. Or it'll finish out that loop and then go into like, the next loop. Um, and then that allows you that flexibility of being like, I only want to capture the moments I'm talking, or the moments that I'm like setting the hook and stuff. There are going to be times where you will hit record and it's like 2 seconds before the end of a loop. So you have nothing but the moment you hit record and 2 seconds prior to that. So you might miss something. Like, you can't like, show the whole setup to the hook set or whatever you're talking about before that. But it makes it much more manageable. You get a bunch of good clips at the end of the day that are
Okay.
only the action of what you did. And if you have an external mic plugged into it, you've got that really good quality to go with it too. And you just run a chesty like that. I mean, just as
Okay.
simple as that. A GoPro, one little mic plugged in. You don't even have to, but that onboard GoPro audio is garbage. On the
Yeah.
older ones, I don't know how good or bad it is on the Hero 9s and the 10s. And just put it in looping mode. And then you're good. You can run with a much smaller video card because you're just doing clips throughout the day. You could probably get away with maybe a 64 gig, but honestly, the prices on micro SD cards have come down so much. Like a 128 gig, like, has you covered. You don't have to worry about that all day. You can film at 4K at 60 frames, and you'll be able to do a ton of stuff with that. But chest mount, GoPro set into loop mode, and just the moment you set the hook, or like you're like, you know what? I always catch something off that tree. I'm gonna hit record now. Okay, let's fish that tree, and you're good to go. And then it's one nice, easy to travel with, compact package that you can use as a co-angler.
All right. Going on that with the mic. Mark says, any recommendations for mics?
That is kind of tough for me to answer to, especially when you're talking chest mounts. GoPro
Okay.
has their own version, which I've heard is pretty good. Rode, RODE, is a great quality product. Like, pretty much a great brand, I should say. Pretty much anything they make, you cannot go wrong with. It's at a higher tier for price, but it's one of those you get what you pay for, right?
Right.
I've messed around with like shotgun condenser style mics for when I first started. I didn't have my own separate microphone to record while I was fishing. And those are good, but they're very directional. So if it's not pointed at the focal point of what you're doing, like if I had it set up on the camera, right, you're talking, or even right here, you have to be talking into it to really get
Okay.
into focus. If I'm talking this way, it's going to sound like I'm talking like this, where it's not really picking me up. So there's things to consider like that for that style. You want something that's more orbital, right? Almost records in 360, so it gets all of your surroundings. You could do that. Alternatively, if you're someone like me who likes to record all day, a couple of shotgun condenser mics are good. And you
Okay.
can kind of finagle with where they're positioned and everything and just make sure you're always talking into one. Or go the route that I do. It adds a little bit of an added element to the editing process, but for me, in my opinion, it gets the best of both worlds for overall quality. I run with a completely separate mic. It's got its own little digital audio recorder. I tuck it in my pocket, and it's got a little clip-on lavalier mic. I run it up through my shirt, clip it right here, dead center. So no matter which way I'm talking, it picks me up perfect, and it's crystal clear. There's a ton of options you can go with that, man. The audio recorder itself, there's you can buy just the recorder, and they range in price. Tascam, TASCAM, makes some great ones at reasonable prices. You can usually find them on sale on Amazon pretty often. Like a good one will run you $80 on sale, maybe upwards of $110 if they're not on sale. Sennheiser makes great stuff. Again, Rode makes great stuff. I wish I don't have my GoPro case here. I can't remember the one I bought, but it was $150. It's a very nice, it's like that big, compact digital audio recorder. It has like a really nice metal belt loop clip if you want to use it like that instead of tucking it in your pocket. And
Okay.
it comes with its own mic that actually plugs in and then threads in to the audio recorder. That was the problem I had with that Tascam. You just plug in the mic, but as you move and it twists, it kind of sounds like, I don't know if you can hear that, but it kind of sounds like that. It sounds like you're rubbing up against the mic. It can come unplugged and everything. That's what led me to this version. The mic quality is phenomenal. Like the audio quality is the best I've ever had. But the microphones can't come unplugged either because you plug it in and then you thread it in tight, so it's not moving. There's a whole when you get into the world of audio, the sky's the limit. You can get into it on a budget for we'll say like for a separate audio recorder and mic, 60 to $80 will get you like
Okay.
pretty good quality. $150 gets you phenomenal quality, and then you can go from there. You can get like wireless receivers that you can plug into your GoPro or camera, and then a little wireless mic. But then you got to worry about battery life. Most of them don't go as long as I need, which is like I want 10 hours. That way I know if I'm out there for longer than 10 hours, I don't care what I miss. I've already had a phenomenal day. But
Right.
if I'm out there for a tournament, I want to make sure I've got like 9 hours. I want to get a little bit before it starts and a little bit after it ends. So there's a lot of that to play into as well. Like, what is the battery life on a lot of these things? If I prefer ones that I can put in fresh AA or AAA batteries every time, because then I know with a good set of batteries, it's going to last me 10 hours, and it removes another thing out of the equation for me.
Nice. Control what you can.
Exactly.
Yep. So, any other questions for Sean? My mind's blown right now. I'm not a real techie guy, but everything you say makes sense to me, which I greatly appreciate.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's funny
Um,
because I think I said it earlier in the stream too. It's not something that a lot of guys put thought into it, and with good reason. It's not something that most people would want to put thought into when they're out there. And a lot of those guys on the water either have someone that's already dedicated to filming that worries about that all for them, or they have a really nice camera where your only option is the battery packs you have with it. And the rest of them
right.
are just doing chesty mounts, so they just, battery died. Okay, just pop a new one in and you're good. But I wanted something more. Yeah, I'll say the brand. 'Cause I'm not bashing them by any means. There are other companies out there that offer you like true power resources for your recording. YOLO Tech is a big one.
Yep.
I've heard nothing bad about their products. They're not for me because they're very limited in what they can do for what I would prefer to do. So like they've got one that's really popular on the back of your boat or for a bass boat, and even on a kayak, I think too. You've got your white light you're supposed to have in the back for when it's
Yep.
dark out, and it's got whatever that 3-prong plug is, or maybe it's 2-prong. And even some of those lights will thread in a little bit. They make a post like that, and it telescopes, and it's got the GoPro mount at the top. But the only thing that can do is like articulate like this. I don't think it can really articulate any way you want, and it's set all the way in the back of the boat, off to the side, like way off at an angle. So you lose a lot of flexibility in what you can do with that, but it runs off the boat. It's the easiest plug and play thing it is, man. You just pop it in, put the GoPro in, run a cable from the GoPro to the post, and you're done. And you got power off your boat. As long as your boat's got power, GoPro's got power. They make some other mounts for like, kind of like these gooseneck mounts. They have like
Okay.
dual GoPro bridges you can put up here and things like that. So there are other companies that make dedicated hardware, for lack of a better way to put it, to all this stuff. But understand that a lot of it comes with limitations because nobody's really put as much thought into this as I have.
Yeah, what you need to do is get a mount that'll attach to the trolling motor.
Right. Well, so actually, okay, there's one thing I do want to elaborate on that I didn't get to cover yet, and one of them was what I'm doing for the new setup. So one caveat with these gooseneck mounts. They're great. They hold up pretty well. Like, it's got a pretty good spring force on the clamp that's supposed to be here. You can't run with them. If you're in a bass boat, if it's really choppy, they will bounce around. If I'm in a bass boat and I want to run, all the cameras have to come down. That's the only limitation I have with that, which sucks because if I'm fishing like, big lakes, in lakes region, Newfound, Squam, Winnisquam, Lake Winnipesaukee, like, I mean, even a smaller couple 100-acre lake, if it's choppy, glass smooth, run with them. The wind, if you're getting over like 40 miles an hour, they'll just, they kind of bend down, but whatever,
Right.
just get back and stand it back up. But if it's chopped, those things will bounce right off the boat. So you have to pull them down, and then as they're all bouncing around the floor, your battery pack might come unplugged. Or just the cable on the camera itself might come jostled loose, and everything shuts off. You got to turn it back on, resynchronize everything for audio, which for me, because my audio recorders are not synced to my GoPros, I literally just clap 5 times really loud. So when I dump it all in my editing software, I see 5 really big audio spikes. I just line everything up and everything's synchronized from the get-go. But what I'm going to do moving forward, and this is something to consider for those that are willing to drill holes in their boat, because really what it's going to come down to. Ram mount, let me get it, it's right here. I'm really excited about this. Ram mount, they make everything, right? They make ram mounts for your bass boat, for your graphs, the whole 9 yards. They have this kind of neat little thing where they have the actual ram mount, the base plate with the ball, but then they sell, unfortunately, their own proprietary tubes. It's literally just PVC, but it's a different diameter than what you can get at like Home Depot or Lowe's or your local hardware store. So you do have a fixed length with it. But what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to actually bolt that plate to my bass boat. And then this is a 1.5-inch ball. This thing, I mean, it's meant to hold like a 12-inch graph. It can hold a lot. And then that'll come up to just a 1-inch ball, because this end can be a little bit more, it doesn't need to be as durable or sturdy. And then I have my buddy machine up a plate. So what I can do is on my boat, I'll be able to mount up on here. Sorry, I'm too high. Aluminum plate, 2 GoPros. I'll have one on the outside facing for the front of the boat, and then the one on that inside that I talked about earlier facing to the back of the boat. And then I'll be able to bolt up basically like a small Plano waterproof box, and I'll drill a small hole on the underside so I can feed my USB cables up and plug into the battery packs. I'll run a couple little fasteners through that case. So when I'm here at the end of the night, or the night before I go fishing, right? I can throw that battery pack in, feed the cables in, plug them in, mount the GoPros, plug the cables in, walk out like this to my boat in the morning. So that when I want to go fish, I literally just have to attach it from that ram mount, turn it on, and I'm good to go.
Nice.
This will not move. I should be able to run 60 miles an hour across 3-foot chop, and this is not going anywhere. This is going to be by far the most overkill GoPro setup I think anybody will ever have on their boat. But I'll be able to hold 2 battery packs and 2 GoPros and mount it first thing in the morning. Just hit go, because I would have done all my cables and battery packs and everything the night before, and just forget about it. Then it's one less thing I have to worry about. And it'll be mostly waterproof. I guess some water could splash up through that hole, but I forget what it's called. You can find them on Amazon. It's silicone you put in your ear for people that like when they swim, and it's really malleable. You can take that, you can put it around where the cable plugs into the GoPro, and you just kind of like roll it out long and thin, put it on, circle around, mash it in a little bit. Not really waterproof, but like if it's raining, you're good. You're not going to get any water in there. Same deal with where those plugs come into the case. I can just put it around there. I don't care how choppy it is. No water is going to get in there. It's going to be fine. This is overkill. This is for people like me that like literally want a one and done setup. Doesn't matter what conditions you're in. You just set the thing up and run. I forget why I got off on that tangent. I was just talking about durability of setups. Right. The drawback to this, like, it's great. It holds up for everything. But if you're going to run the chop, take them down. or you're gonna lose that GoPro.
All right, Sean has a question. All right, what
Ooh.
kind of content do you feel people wanted to see the most?
That largely, in my opinion, depends upon the personality that's making the content. You know,
Okay.
there's 1,000 people that do every kind of content related to fishing out there. What it really comes down to is the type of person pushing out the content and I guess what they like to present. So a lot of that is kind of relation to whatever that person started out doing. Like for me, I've always tried to be informative and entertaining. And people like that. Like that's just been what works for us. You know, my buddy and I will sit there, Andrew and I will break down everything that we're doing. And at the same time, we're busting each other's chops all day long and just joking around and having fun. And that works for us. So for me, what people want to see more of is more angles. You know, a lot of people have always been asking for chest mounts. Not going to happen. I can have more GoPros so I can get more angles. Like people don't like to see a ton of just fixed position angles like constantly. It's just the way we're built as human beings. Yeah. Like, you know, like this, that one, even though like we're moving around and stuff, that one fixed camera position all day, it doesn't grasp people's attention. You watch fishing shows, it's 2-second clip, 2-second clip, 2-second clip, 2-second clip. And it could be a guy talking for 5 minutes straight, but they're just constantly rolling through different footage. And it's the reason why I like TikTok and all that crap and reels on Instagram are so big is shorter attention span for people, you know, that's just that quick hit stuff. So like just expanding upon what you already do that people like in my case, trying to do more informative breakdowns because I guess I can explain myself pretty well for what it is that we do, and just adding more, just adding more perspective to it, and even behind the scenes, like that's a thing a lot of people like to see. Just I've got other channels I've loved for years, and some of them are mostly gaming stuff, but then there's other guys that are like fishing stuff. And, they do their regular content, and there's a reason why you're there. You like them. You like what they're doing, the whole 9 yards. Dude, I live for when I get to see just, like, behind-the-scenes random things in them. Like, just them in, like, kind of everyday normal life. And it could be as simple as, man, I'm just, like, kind of going about fixing up my boat for the day. But, there's kind of something important here I want to share, but just kind of see, like, the ins and outs of their everyday life as they're going about. Like, yeah, no, I got a loose lug nut on there or something. I got to tighten it up. It's, like, those are kind of the three big things. That for me personally, my opinion, that I think more people want to see. And again, it's largely based on the type of person that they're watching.
Yeah. And I do want to give you a little bit of credit because I know a lot of engineers. Okay. Yep. And most of them speak to people like a doctor speaks to a patient. Just because they can understand it doesn't mean everybody else can. And you're speaking in terms that I, the average idiot, can understand.
Well, thank you.
I greatly appreciate that.
You're welcome. I credit a lot of that just to the way my dad raised me. He was a master plumber in 3 states, New Hampshire, Mass, Maine. He always worked for himself, but a lot of what he did was new construction, and he'd have to work, with other guys on the site and stuff. You think plumber, it's not really that advanced. It's not as like I put pipe together, like simple shit as that. Right. There's a lot of electrical stuff involved, but you have to work hand in hand with other guys on the site so that, the framers don't do something stupid or the electricians don't do something stupid that screws my dad over and vice versa. He doesn't do something stupid that screws them over. Right. So being able to explain what you do as a master, what you do to other people that don't do what you do. I spent, I don't even know how many days of my childhood with my dad on job sites. And just being, in the moment of seeing that. And then coupled with that, for about 3 years of my career as an engineering manager. So I had direct reports. I had to train people and stuff. We had other people come on when I was just a regular engineer too that, okay, Sean, like you're really well versed at this, like teach. And the very first time I had to do it, I had that problem, where like I just spoke to what I already know and kind of skipped over all the stuff I already did know. And I was very fortunate. The guy that I taught that was trying to train on this, like spoke up. He's like, hey, like, but what about the basic steps that got you to that? And it clicked right away. I was like, right. Okay. Right. You haven't done this before. Like, fresh kid out of college. Okay. Let's back it up and start from the beginning. Right. And then having the misfortune of working for someone that was at that high level and didn't know how to come back down to the basics to explain it to me, getting in an entirely new industry. And they're speaking from their 30 years of experience, and they don't remember the first 3 years they did this. So they didn't know how to come back down to talk at that level to then help me get to that next level. And then that's just something that I took great pride in, like understanding those experiences in my life and realizing that like the vast majority of people are the same way. You need
Hmm.
to be able to understand where their knowledge level is, and you probably
Right.
have to come right back down to square one so that you can break it down in a meaningful way and you step up with them to get them to where you're at. And I feel like I did a really good job with that as an engineering manager for the few years I did it.
Well, I don't know how you were then, but you're doing a great job now. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
You're welcome.
Um, so, is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, you pretty much talked about everything I'd thought of as far as cameras and how you set them up on the boats, what cameras you use, things like that. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Talk about your show a little bit.
Yeah, real quick, one thing I will bring up for the cameras because it's a pretty important aspect of filming that I think a lot of people overlook. When you're looking at memory cards, you have to pay attention to the speed class. There's like class 10 and then there's a couple of different versions. When you're filming, especially at 4K, it has to be class 10. And with that, you have to look at read write speed. I forget what the minimum threshold is, but I want to say it's 100 megabytes per second for both read and write speed that you need if you're doing like high resolution filming. In this
Okay.
case, all my my older GoPros I was using up until literally like 2 weeks ago, they were I used all I forget what it was. I know I used all Samsung memory cards, but they were about that 100 megabyte read write speed. The Hero 10s have much more processing power. I'm trying to go a higher resolution and or a higher frame rate. So I went up. I went way up. I went to I think it's 160 meg read speed and 130 megabyte write speed. So it's pretty beefy. And then with that, if you're getting into the video editing aspect, make sure your computer has USB 3.0 or you will be waiting forever to transfer that footage from GoPro to computer. It's not just the USB 3.0 connection that provides that speed, but also that read write speed on your memory cards also plays into that big too. You can have great write speed, but if you got a really low read speed, doesn't matter if you have USB 3.0 on your computer. It's still going to take forever to get all that footage off because it's only going to read up to a certain rate per second. So,
Right.
um, just one last added aspect to that, and then I'll throw one to the question too, John. As long as you have time, if anybody
Yeah,
wants to
I'm
talk,
good.
okay, if anybody wants to talk video editing too on that aspect, I'm happy to touch upon that. I won't do a deep dive because we could do a 2-hour episode just on that. But if anybody is interested that's watching, I can cover at least the basics of that. Both free and paid for software, just some like tips and tricks I learned over the years and things like that.
Either that, or we can just do another show on that.
I'd be fine with that.
Okay. Cool.
And then I guess as far as me and the channel, first off, John, I greatly appreciate you asking me to come on. And again, thank you to Dan Kenny. Hopefully he sees this for helping to facilitate this because I had fun. I love this stuff. If that wasn't clear enough. For me, my channel, it's 603 Bass, 603 Bass.com, youtube.com/603 Bass. I'm on Instagram, 603 Bass. Like literally you search 603 Bass anywhere, it's me, except for Fishbrain. There's some dude on there that stole my username before I got on there. And I have messaged him so many times because he doesn't use it. I'm like, hey man, can I like maybe get that? And he just won't respond. So I'm 603 Bass _ fishing on there.
Okay.
But yeah, man, like we try and do videos once a week for like regular fishing content. This summer was kind of tough changing jobs and just the role that I have now. I lost a lot of just like good fishing time and especially video editing time. But every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we do our own show called Real Northern Bass Talk. Every week we try and pick like a specific topic and break it down. We've had a lot of guests over the weeks. We're coming up pretty close on episode 50 here. We've got recently we got back to doing guests because I revamped everything for a whole setup. So the audio quality is great if somebody's here or if they're calling in, doesn't matter. And we've got a couple of really like awesome guests lined up over the next like 2 months. So if that sounds interesting, you guys want more Northeastern content, appreciate you guys checking us out.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure everybody else does as well. I know I want to get in touch with you as far as Champlain.
Oh yeah, I can help out.
Maybe we get together and do some fishing up there.
I'd be
So,
down for that. I'm gonna be up there several times this year. There's a good chance I'll be there in the middle of July for, if not a full week, like a really long weekend. I
okay,
got invited to go up and kind of like not guide, but like coach
okay,
a fishing camp this year.
nice.
So I'm going to try and make that happen because that just sounds like a fun experience anyway. And I do
Yeah,
high school bass fishing coach for my third year now, and I love taking kids out fishing. So
sure.
I'll be up there a lot this year, man. I love that lake, and I'm dying to get up there more often.
Yeah. Now, do you prefer the Plattsburgh or Thai, or doesn't not matter?
You know what? I don't know, man, because they're special in their own way. And then the other
Correct.
problem is I've only fished the Thai area really once, and even from there, like I launched on the Vermont side of
Okay.
Ticonderoga, but
Yep.
it's effectively Ticonderoga, right? It's so skinny
Yeah.
right there. And from there, I ran up to like Port Henry area, and I did a lot of
Yep.
fishing in there. But the Ticonderoga area itself, I haven't done a ton of fishing on. I meant to
Yeah.
this year. Water was, I forget, there was something up in the water. I forget if it was high or low. But like talking to people, like, dude, I don't know what's going on, but the Thai area is not on this spring, so don't even bother. All right,
Yeah. I
so I
was.
just kept fishing the northern end.
Yeah. I fished the Federation tournament there in opening week for Champlain, which is the second week in June,
Yep,
and all the top weights came from Plattsburgh.
no kidding.
Yeah, because they went
Yep.
up there getting the big smallmouth on the bed. So yeah, but
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
anyways, thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to take you off here, um, and talk a little bit about our next week's show, and we'll go from there.
All right, sounds good. Again,
All right.
John,
If
thank
you
you very
want
much
to,
for having me on, man. I
hey,
appreciate
not
it.
a problem. Thank you.
Cool. All right,
Talk
man.
to you later, Sean.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. Bye bye. All right, everybody. I want to thank Sean and 603 Bass for joining me on tonight's show. Thank you all for asking questions. Appreciate it. Some of the questions you asked, I had no clue that was going to come up, and I didn't even think about. So thank you very much. And I want to go through a list of our supporters once again. And JCX Fishing. Come on, switch over. MGM Call Tags. Seneca Metals Incorporated. Ardent. Kisselcraft Custom Rods. Andy's World Famous Heat Your Meat. Fillmore Tackle and More. It's Pro Fishing Gear. Buck and Bass Gear. Martin's Custom Baits, LLC. Trigger Happy Comfort Grips. High Use of Fishing. Wicked Weights Quality Tungsten. K9 Fishing. And me, JCX Fishing. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. Be safe. And take a kid fishing. And if you're going to go out fishing in the soft water, make sure you have your life vest.